If you're over 60, here's a belief you may need to question right now. Stronger bones don't always come from stronger medications. What if the real issue isn't that your body lacks calcium, but that your bones no longer recognize the signal to use it? That idea should make you pause, because it changes what bone loss after 60 actually means. According to emerging research in aging and bone metabolism, many approaches focus on supply, while quietly overlooking instruction, and bones, it turns out, are selective listeners. And here's the unsettling question. If your bones are picky about what they respond to, how do you know your current routine is sending the right message? Let me ask you something uncomfortable but important. What if the reason bone density keeps declining, even when you do everything right, is because the message never reaches the bone cell? What if pills are present, nutrients are present, but the biological conversation is broken? If you're over 60, this isn't theoretical. It can happen quietly, day after day, without pain, without warning, until a scan or a fall finally reveals the gap. And that moment can feel shocking, because it suggests you weren't lazy, you were simply aiming at the wrong target. But here's the curiosity that matters. What exactly causes that message to fail in the first place? Here's where it gets even more eye-opening. Studies in nutritional signaling suggest bones don't respond equally to all inputs. Some choices only slow damage. Some create the illusion of protection. And a few, very few, can actually nudge bone behavior back toward rebuilding. Most people never learn the difference because everything gets lumped into the same category of bone health. They're told to add more, increase dosage, or switch brands. But what if that approach misses the real switch entirely? The one that tells bone cells to stop conserving and start responding? If you're over 60, your bones don't just need more, they need clarity. And that raises a practical question you can feel in your gut. If clarity is the key, where does it come from? Now consider this. What if something simple, something you'd never associate with bone repair, could deliver a clearer signal than what most people rely on? Not because it's stronger, not because it's trendy, but because it speaks the right biological language at the right time. This is where curiosity matters, because the answer isn't obvious, and it's rarely explained in plain English. In fact, many people overlook it precisely because it doesn't look medical enough. Yet researchers are paying closer attention to how everyday combinations can influence bone turnover, absorption, and activation, not in a dramatic overnight way, but in a real, measurable direction over time. And here's the question you should hold on to. What if your next step isn't a stronger product, but a smarter signal? If you're over 60 and you've ever wondered why bone health advice feels repetitive, but results feel limited, stay with me. In a moment, you'll see why some approaches quietly stall while others create momentum, and why the order of signals can matter more than the amount. In the next part, we're going to peel back that logic step by step, starting with the weakest signal most people depend on, and building toward the one that changes how bones respond when it actually counts. If you're over 60, one of the most dangerous things about bone loss is not the fracture itself. It's how quietly the process unfolds long before anything breaks. Bone weakening doesn't announce itself with pain or daily symptoms. It can progress in the background for years until a simple step off a curb, a minor fall, or even a quick twist reveals damage that's been building for a long time. And by the time many people discover it, the system has already been compromised. Here's the question most people never ask soon enough. If you feel fine, how would you even know your bones are drifting in the wrong direction? Here's the part most people don't realize. Bone loss after 60 is rarely caused by one single deficiency. It's often caused by miscommunication. The body may be absorbing nutrients, swallowing supplements, and following recommendations, yet the bone cells themselves are no longer responding the way they once did. That breakdown in signaling can quietly raise the risk of fractures, posture changes, balance problems, and long recovery periods. And the most unsettling part is this. You can feel perfectly normal while it's happening. So it's worth asking, what if the real danger isn't what you're missing, but what your bones are no longer hearing? But here's where the story changes, because the good news is bones are not passive tissue. Even later in life, they remain biologically active. They listen, they adapt, they respond. when the signal is right. Research in aging physiology suggests bones don't react to quantity alone. They react to quality, timing, and the message behind the input. When the internal message shifts from maintenance to instruction, the response can change in a meaningful way. That's why there's real hope here. The door isn't closed just because you're older. And this raises a hopeful curiosity. If bones can still respond, what kind of signal do they respond to best? So let me ask you something important. What if the goal isn't to fight your body harder, but to communicate with it better? What if the missing piece isn't another pill, but a clearer biological message delivered in a form your system still understands? This reframes the problem in a way many people find empowering, because it means you're not stuck. You're not broken. You may simply be using tools that don't translate well anymore. And here's the big question. If translation is the issue, what everyday approach can deliver a clearer message without overwhelming your system? And that brings us to the solution. In this video, you're going to discover how specific everyday combinations can influence bone behavior in very different ways, some barely slowing loss, others quietly shifting how bones respond altogether. We'll move step by step, starting with the weakest signals most people rely on, and building toward the one that sends a much clearer message to aging bone tissue. Once you see the pattern, the strategy behind bone support after 60 becomes far simpler. And in the next section, we'll break down exactly how this progression works. According to Harvard University researchers studying aging and bone metabolism, bone loss after 60 is less about how much calcium you consume and more about how effectively your body uses and directs it. In simple terms, that means your bones don't automatically respond just because nutrients are present. They respond when the internal go signal is clear. That's why so many seniors follow advice faithfully, take supplements daily, and still feel unsure whether anything is truly changing inside their bodies. And here's the question worth pausing on. If the nutrients are there, what exactly is missing from the message? A growing body of research over the past few years suggests bone tissue stays biologically active well into older age, but its priorities shift. In everyday language, bones become more selective listeners. They filter out weak signals and respond to inputs that feel relevant and well-timed. That helps explain why one person can stay steady for years while another sees a sudden drop despite similar routines. You might recognize this pattern yourself, doing all the right things, yet sensing the results don't match the effort. So here's the curiosity. How can two people follow similar advice and get such different outcomes? Researchers also emphasize something most people never connect to bone health. Digestion, muscle activity, and even gut bacteria can influence how bones behave. In simple terms, bone health doesn't live in isolation. It's part of a whole-body conversation. That's why good nutrition can look identical on paper yet work very differently in real life. One body absorbs and translates the signal. Another absorbs it but doesn't convert it into action. Many older adults describe this as feeling out of sync. Energy feels uneven, recovery feels slower, and strength feels unpredictable. But what if that feeling isn't weakness at all? What if it's simply poor communication between systems? Studies also point to a practical truth. Timing, combination, and delivery can matter more than most people realize. In everyday life, that explains why adding more of the same thing often stops working. The body doesn't always need repetition, it needs relevance. And this is where curiosity becomes useful, because it suggests improvement doesn't always require escalation. Sometimes it requires translation, changing the form of the message so your system actually acts on it. Here's the question to hold on to. If more isn't the answer, what kind of smarter input changes the response? So before we talk about any specific choices, lock in this principle. Bones don't rebuild because they're pressured. They rebuild because they're persuaded. Once that idea clicks, many long-held assumptions about bone support after 60 begin to loosen. And in the next part, we're going to apply this science step by step, breaking down how different signals affect bone behavior, starting with the mildest ones most people overlook, and moving toward the signals that make bones pay attention. Now, let's count down the bone-building smoothies, starting with the gentlest signal and moving step by step toward the one that surprises almost everyone. As you listen, notice how the biological message quietly changes, because if you're over 60, order often matters more than people realize. Here's a question worth keeping in mind as we begin. Are you choosing smoothies just for nutrition, or for the signal your bones actually respond to? Number 5. Blueberry Almond Smoothie. Protection. First, this smoothie works mainly by calming the environment around your bones. Blueberries help reduce oxidative stress, a process that can gradually speed bone breakdown with age. Almonds add magnesium, which supports mineral balance and steadier muscle function, an important factor because muscles and bones communicate constantly. Together, this combination doesn't push bones to rebuild, but it helps slow unnecessary loss. In daily life, this smoothie fits best earlier in the day, blended lightly and used a few times per week rather than automatically every morning. For adults over 60, portion size matters. Almonds are nutrient-dense but also calorie-rich, and too much at once can feel heavy on digestion or aggravate reflux. Starting modestly keeps the signal gentle and sustainable. What people often notice first is not stronger bones, but a sense of stability. Less fluctuation. Fewer days where the body feels unexpectedly fragile. That's because this smoothie creates a quieter internal environment where bones aren't constantly under stress. Bone health after 60 often improves in stages, and protection is the first one. But here's the curiosity that sets up what comes next. If protection is only the starting point, if it simply helps you stop losing ground, what actually flips the switch from protect to rebuild? That question takes us to the next signal, where absorption and preparation begin to play a much bigger role. Number 4. Spinach Orange Smoothie. Absorption support. This is the stage where the signal becomes more active. Spinach provides vitamin K and magnesium, two nutrients that strongly influence how calcium is handled once it enters the body. Orange adds vitamin C, which supports collagen formation, the flexible framework bones rely on before minerals can properly lock in. Without this framework, calcium may arrive but fail to settle where it's needed. In simple terms, absorption isn't just about intake, it's about preparing bones to receive nutrients correctly. If you're over 60, this step matters more than most people realize. Aging changes digestion, stomach acid, and enzyme activity, all of which affect how efficiently nutrients are absorbed and organized. Many seniors consume calcium-rich foods, yet still experience bone loss, not because intake is low, but because absorption and utilization are inconsistent. This smoothie helps close that gap by supporting a cleaner delivery from the bloodstream into usable structure. And here's the curiosity worth pausing on. If absorption improves, why doesn't rebuilding automatically follow? In practical daily use, this smoothie works best away from heavy meals, when digestion isn't competing with large amounts of fat or protein. Many people do well using it mid-morning, when the body is alert and nutrient transport tends to be more efficient. Keeping the recipe simple matters too. Fewer ingredients help the absorption signal stay clear, which is especially important after 60 when complex meals can blur priorities inside the body. There's an important caution for older adults, particularly those on blood-thinning medications. Leafy greens like spinach are rich in vitamin K, which means consistency is essential. Sudden swings from almost none to a lot can interfere with medication balance. The goal isn't avoidance, it's stability. And that raises a practical question many people overlook. How often does bone health stall not because of danger, but because of inconsistency? What people often notice with this smoothie isn't immediate strength, but better organization. Joints feel less stiff. Recovery feels smoother. Energy feels steadier. Bone health after 60 often improves in phases, and absorption is the setup phase. But here's the key limitation. This smoothie prepares the ground, yet it doesn't deliver the final instruction. Which leads to the next question. What happens when nutrients are absorbed well, but bones still hesitate to rebuild? Number 3. Greek Yogurt Berry Smoothie. Structural support. This is where structure truly enters the conversation. Greek yogurt delivers high-quality protein and calcium together, a combination that plays a key role in preserving the bone matrix, the internal framework that gives bones their shape and strength. Unlike minerals alone, protein helps bones hold on to those minerals once they arrive. Just as importantly, protein supports muscle strength, and stronger muscles send mechanical signals to bones through everyday movement. In simple terms, bones pay attention to what muscles are doing around them. If you're over 60, this muscle-to-bone communication becomes increasingly important. Bones don't rebuild in isolation. They respond to pressure, movement, and load, even gentle load. That's why many seniors notice this smoothie works best after a walk, light resistance work, or even routine house activity. Movement gives the message. Nutrition gives the material. And here's the curiosity to pause on. If bones respond to movement, what happens when nutrition and movement finally work together instead of separately? Berries add another layer of support. They provide antioxidants that help reduce low-grade inflammation, which can interfere with how bones respond to mechanical signals over time. This doesn't create rapid change, but it helps protect the structure you already have. In daily life, this smoothie fits naturally into a post-activity routine, not as a reward, but as reinforcement. That timing matters more than most people realize, especially after 60, when recovery signals become quieter. There are a few smart cautions to keep in mind. Lactose sensitivity becomes more common with age, and while Greek yogurt is generally easier to digest, it's still important to pay attention to how your body responds. For those with kidney conditions or on certain medications, protein and mineral load may require moderation or medical guidance. Starting with smaller portions and observing tolerance is far more effective than pushing for maximum intake. And this raises an important question many people overlook. How often does a well-intended bone routine fail simply because digestion can't keep up? What people often notice with this smoothie is not dramatic rebuilding, but steadier strength. Less fluctuation. Fewer days where the body feels unexpectedly weak or fatigued. That's because structural support helps maintain what you've built so far. Bone health after 60 often depends on protecting gains before chasing new ones. This is the stage where many people finally stop losing ground, and that alone can feel like progress. But here's the key limitation. Structural support helps you hold the line, not necessarily advance it. It reinforces the framework, stabilizes muscle-to-bone signaling, and preserves density. But it doesn't always deliver a strong build now instruction. And that brings us to the curiosity that naturally follows. If structure keeps bones steady, what provides the signal that tells them it's safe and necessary to grow stronger again? That question moves us closer to the signals that go beyond maintenance and into control and activation, where real momentum begins to build. Number 2, Prune Kefir Smoothie, Bone Turnover Control. This smoothie targets one of the most overlooked aspects of bone health after 60. Bone turnover, the delicate balance between how fast bone breaks down and how efficiently it rebuilds. Many people assume bone loss is only about weakness, but in reality, it's often about speed. When breakdown outpaces rebuilding, even slightly, bone density slowly declines over time. Prunes contain unique bioactive compounds associated with slower bone resorption, helping reduce how quickly bone tissue is taken apart. Kefir supports this process from a different angle by improving mineral absorption through the gut and helping nutrients arrive more consistently rather than in spikes. If you're over 60, this matters more than you may realize. As digestion changes with age, nutrient delivery becomes less predictable. Some days absorption is efficient, other days it isn't, and bones respond poorly to inconsistency. In simple terms, bones prefer steady communication. That's where this smoothie stands out. Instead of forcing growth, it calms excessive turnover and creates conditions where rebuilding can keep pace. And this raises an important curiosity. If bone loss is often about imbalance rather than absence, what happens when that imbalance finally settles? In practical daily use, this smoothie works best a few times per week rather than every day. Many older adults find the afternoon ideal when digestion is active but the body isn't under the stress of a heavy meal. Portion size matters. Prunes are powerful, but they also contain natural sugars, which means moderation is essential, especially for anyone managing blood glucose levels. Kefir helps buffer this effect by slowing digestion and supporting gut health, but listening to your body remains key. This isn't a race, it's a rhythm. There's also an important digestion note for seniors. Prunes support bowel regularity, which can indirectly benefit bone health by improving nutrient absorption overall. However, using too much can cause discomfort, bloating, or swings in blood sugar. Starting small and staying consistent allows the body to adapt without stress. And here's a question worth asking. How many bone routines fail simply because they overwhelm digestion rather than support it? What people often notice first with this smoothie isn't dramatic strength, but stability. Fewer fluctuations. Less of that good week, bad week feeling. That's because steadier bone turnover supports balance, posture, and confidence in everyday movement. Bone health after 60 rarely improves in obvious jumps. It improves quietly, when breakdown slows enough for rebuilding to catch up. And this is where many people begin to feel encouraged, because progress finally feels sustainable. The result of the prune kefir smoothie is controlled remodeling, rather than aggressive stimulation. Bones aren't rushed, but they're no longer losing ground unnecessarily. According to emerging research in bone metabolism and aging physiology, this calmer internal environment is often a prerequisite for meaningful gains later on. And that leads us to the key curiosity that sets up the final step. If turnover is now under control, what delivers the clearest signal to actively build new bone rather than simply maintain what's left? That question brings us directly to the most surprising signal of all, and the one many people underestimate until they understand how bone communication truly works. Number 1. Sesame banana kefir smoothie, activation signal. And finally, we reach the most underestimated smoothie of all. Not because it's rare or exotic, but because most people never realize how differently it speaks to aging bones. Ground sesame seeds provide calcium in a form that's easier for the body to recognize and organize, especially compared to isolated supplements. Banana supports potassium balance, which plays a quiet but important role in reducing calcium loss through urine. Kefir adds another critical layer by improving digestion and mineral delivery, helping nutrients actually reach the places where they're needed. Together, this combination doesn't just supply nutrients, it sends direction. Here's why this matters if you're over 60. As we age, bone signaling weakens. Bones become more conservative, less responsive, and slower to act on incoming nutrients. In simple terms, they stop reacting automatically. That's why consistency matters more than intensity with this smoothie. Used regularly, not occasionally, it helps restore a clearer internal message. These minerals are not just passing through, they're meant to be used. And this raises an important curiosity. If signaling is the real issue after 60, could consistency matter more than quantity? In practical daily use, this smoothie works best when it's kept simple and predictable. Many older adults do well using it a few times per week rather than every day, ideally earlier in the day when digestion is strongest. Portion control is essential. Sesame seeds are nutrient-dense and calorie-rich, which makes them powerful but also easy to overdo. Anyone with digestive sensitivity should start small and pay attention to how their body responds. This isn't about pushing harder, it's about giving your system something it can comfortably understand. What makes this smoothie different from others is not speed but clarity. Instead of flooding the system, it delivers a message bones can act on. That's why many people describe a gradual sense of stability rather than dramatic overnight change. Bone health after 60 rarely improves in sudden leaps. It improves when signals stop conflicting. And here's a key question worth holding on to. How many bone health routines fail, not because they're wrong, but because they're too complicated to follow consistently? The result of this smoothie is not just support, but activation. Bones receive a clearer instruction to use what's already available, rather than storing or ignoring it. This aligns with what emerging research on bone metabolism and bone remodeling continues to suggest. Aging bones respond best to clear, repeated, and well-timed signals. In other words, natural bone support works when it respects how the body actually communicates. And here's the final curiosity to leave you with. Once you understand which signal is strongest, the real challenge isn't finding more solutions. It's building a routine that feels safe, realistic, and easy to maintain long-term. Because bone health after 60 isn't about perfection, it's about creating patterns your body can stick with. Now that you've seen how these signals build step by step, the next part is where everything connects. We'll talk about how to use this knowledge safely and realistically in daily life, without overdoing it, without creating new risks, and without turning your kitchen into a full-time job. If you've been feeling tired, uncertain, or worried about your bones lately, you're not alone, and many people your age feel the same way. The good news is that your body can still adapt and respond at any age when it receives the right kind of support. Tell us in the comments, how old are you, and what's your biggest health goal right now? Your experience might encourage someone else watching, and in just a moment, we'll gently show how these ideas can fit into a safe, realistic daily routine. Before making major diet changes, always check with your doctor, especially if you're over 60 or taking medications. Remember, your body still has the capacity to strengthen and adjust over time. If this video helped you, please like it and share it with someone who could use a little reassurance today. And stay with us, because what comes next ties everything together in a practical, senior-friendly way.